Welcome to today's video. In the next half hour, we'll be taking a deep dive into the glorious history of one of the most iconic cities in the world, a city that never sleeps, New York City. Known globally as a hub for finance, art, culture, and fashion, New York is much more than just a city. It's a symbol of ambition, resilience, and constant reinvention. Home to over 8 million people, New York City is a melting pot of cultures, ideas, and dreams. But how did this bustling metropolis come to be? What are the key moments that shaped its growth, resilience, and influence on the world? Today, we will explore its humble beginnings, its rapid growth, the challenges it faced, and how it emerged as a global center for culture, commerce, and innovation. We'll trace its history from the early 17th century to modern-day New York, touching on pivotal events, cultural movements, and the extraordinary people who made this city what it is today. Whether you're a New Yorker or just someone fascinated by this incredible city, stay tuned as we unravel the vibrant and diverse history of New York City. To truly understand New York City's development, we must first go back to its roots, which are deeply embedded in the early days of European exploration. In 1609, Henry Hudson, a Dutch explorer, sailed into the waters of what we now call New York Harbor. Hudson was on a mission to find a westward passage to Asia, but what he discovered instead was a strategic inlet to North America, which would later serve as the foundation for one of the world's greatest cities. In 1624, the Dutch established a small settlement called Nieuw Amsterdam on the southern tip of Manhattan Island. The Dutch were interested in trade, and their strategic location allowed them to quickly build a thriving port. Over the next several decades, this port became one of the busiest in North America, trading goods such as furs, tobacco, and sugar with countries around the world. However, this early period of Dutch rule was short-lived. In 1664, the English seized control of the settlement without much resistance and renamed it New York in honor of the Duke of York, who later became King James II of England. This was the beginning of New York's transformation into an English colony, and it marked the beginning of the city's expansion beyond its original settlement. As New York continued to grow, it began to take on an increasingly important role in the broader colonial economy. The city was geographically well-positioned, situated at the mouth of the Hudson River and offering easy access to the Atlantic Ocean. By the mid-18th century, New York had become one of the most prosperous and influential cities in the American colonies. One of the most significant events in New York's early history occurred in 1789, when it became the first capital of the newly formed United States of America. The city hosted the first Congress under the U.S. Constitution, and George Washington was sworn in as the first president in the city's Federal Hall. This event not only made New York a focal point for American politics, but also cemented its place in the history of the new nation. The 19th century marked an era of rapid growth and transformation for New York City. By the early 1800s, the city was emerging as a major port of entry for immigrants, particularly from Europe. The construction of the Erie Canal in 1825 helped connect New York to the Great Lakes and the Midwest, solidifying its position as the primary gateway for trade and immigration into the United States. New York was also becoming an industrial powerhouse. Factories began to spring up along the city's waterfront, processing goods like cotton, wool, and iron, while the city's population grew at a staggering rate. This was a time of rapid urbanization, and New York's streets were filled with people from all over the world. By the mid-19th century, the city had become the most populous in the U.S., and it would continue to attract millions of immigrants over the decades. In fact, New York's growth during this period is largely defined by the massive waves of immigration that flowed through the city. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, people from countries like Ireland, Germany, Italy, and Eastern Europe arrived in droves, seeking better economic opportunities and fleeing political unrest. This influx of immigrants forever changed the social fabric of the city, making it one of the most culturally diverse places in the world. Ellis Island, which opened in 1892, became the main entry point for millions of immigrants. At its peak, Ellis Island processed over 12 million people, many of whom arrived with little more than the clothes on their backs. The island was not only a symbol of the American dream, but also a poignant reminder of the struggles and sacrifices made by those seeking a new life. Throughout this period, New York also witnessed the rise of iconic neighborhoods that still exist today, like Chinatown, Little Italy, and Harlem. These neighborhoods became cultural hubs for their respective immigrant communities, each contributing to the city's rich cultural tapestry. Harlem, in particular, became a mecca for African American culture, giving birth to the Harlem Renaissance in the 1920s, a cultural movement that produced some of the greatest writers, musicians, and artists in American history, including Langston Hughes, Zora Neale Hurston, and Duke Ellington. By the time the 1930s arrived, New York City had firmly established itself as the nation's financial and cultural capital. However, no one could predict the economic catastrophe that would strike at the end of the decade. In 1929, the U.S. stock market crashed, triggering the Great Depression. The effects were felt acutely in New York, which was home to the largest concentration of banks and stockbrokers in the country. Wall Street, the heart of the financial district, became a symbol of the nation's economic collapse. Thousands of people lost their jobs, homes, and savings. Unemployment skyrocketed, and poverty gripped the city. Despite these challenges, New Yorkers showed remarkable resilience. The New Deal, a series of programs and projects initiated by President Franklin D. Roosevelt, helped revive the economy and brought much-needed relief to millions of people in the city. During this time, New York saw the construction of several iconic public works projects, including the Hoover Dam, the Lincoln Tunnel, and the Triborough Bridge. These projects not only provided jobs, but also laid the groundwork for the city's future growth and development. In addition to infrastructure, New York's cultural life began to flourish again. Broadway theater saw a resurgence, and the city's jazz scene continued to thrive. Despite the suffering and hardship caused by the Great Depression, New York emerged stronger than ever. The city's economy slowly recovered throughout the 1930s and 1940s, and it once again became a beacon of opportunity and innovation for people around the world. The post-World War II era brought a new wave of growth and prosperity to New York City. The city underwent a massive transformation as iconic skyscrapers began to dot its skyline, symbolizing the nation's post-war optimism and economic power. In 1931, the Empire State Building was completed, standing as the tallest building in the world for over 40 years. This towering structure became an international symbol of New York's ambition and progress. The Chrysler Building, completed in 1930, and the World Trade Center in the 1970s followed, cementing New York's status as the architectural capital of the world. During the mid-20th century, New York also became a global leader in arts, culture, and media. The city's influence on fashion, music, theater, and the visual arts spread worldwide. Broadway remained the heart of American theater, producing legendary shows like West Side Story and The Phantom of the Opera. New York also gave birth to the rise of abstract expressionism and became home to the Museum of Modern Art MoMA, one of the most important modern art institutions in the world. The 1960s and 1970s marked another period of intense cultural upheaval, as New York became the birthplace of several groundbreaking music genres, including punk rock, hip-hop, and disco. The city's cultural diversity, energy, and creativity fueled this explosion of new sounds and artistic movements, leaving an indelible mark on global culture. One of the darkest chapters in New York City's modern history came on September 11, 2001. On this fateful day, two planes were hijacked by terrorists and crashed into the World Trade Center, destroying the Twin Towers and killing thousands of people. The attacks left New Yorkers and the entire world reeling from the shock of an unprecedented act of terror. The images of the towers collapsing are forever etched in the memory of those who witnessed the tragedy. But perhaps even more remarkable than the horror and grief that followed was the resilience of New York City and its people. Despite the unimaginable loss and devastation, New Yorkers immediately began to rebuild their city. Within weeks, the city's recovery efforts began in earnest as workers, volunteers, and first responders rallied together to restore the heart of the city. In the years that followed, the One World Trade Center, also known as the Freedom Tower, was constructed at the site of the original Twin Towers. Completed in 2013, the building stands as a symbol of New York's ability to overcome adversity and emerge stronger than ever. Today, One World Trade Center is not just the tallest building in the Western Hemisphere, but a symbol of resilience and unity in the face of tragedy. Today, New York is a thriving metropolis, one of the most influential cities in the world. From the Empire State Building and One World Trade Center to its vibrant neighborhoods and cultural institutions, New York remains a symbol of possibility, diversity, and progress. It's not just a city, it's an idea, a place where anyone, no matter their background, can come and make their dreams a reality. The city's continued transformation and evolution make it one of the most exciting places to live and visit. Thank you for joining me on this journey through New York's fascinating history. I hope you now have a deeper appreciation for this incredible city, its struggles, triumphs, and most importantly, its unbreakable spirit. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring.